What up, everybody? Time to do another knife review. Today we're going to be talking about the Columbia River knife and tool, CRKT Fossil. This is a frame lock. It is designed by Flavio Ikoma, who is a Brazilian custom knife maker, very well known. And this design is Ikoma all the way. Let's go ahead and do some specs, get the boring stuff out of the way. You're looking at a 3 7/8 inch or 10 centimeter blade length, blade stock thickness 145 thousandths of an inch or 3.69 millimeters, blade width of 1.13 inches or 28.9 millimeters, a handle length of 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters, handle thickness of 665 thousandths of an inch or 16.91 millimeters, handle width 1.21 inches or 30.86 millimeters, a closed width of 1.44 inches or 36.5 millimeters, overall length 8 7/8 inches or 22.5 centimeters, and a weight of 6.07 ounces or 172 grams, and we will talk about that weight again here in just a little bit. All right, like I say, this is a design by Flavio Ikoma, who is a Brazilian custom maker. And Flavio really, he broke out. I was aware of him probably about I don't know, say about 2000, late 2009, early 2010. I was really active on Usual Suspect Network, and Flavio was showing a lot of work on the USN at that time, and he was very well known. He was working in a lot of titanium on his handles, and he was doing hand sculpting and just all kinds of different patterns on his handles. He was very well known for that. And then the next thing you know, through a partnership with Rick Lala of Korth Knives, the next thing you know, they just blew up because they gave us the IKBS pivot bearing system. And you can see this little circle marking here is the IKBS system marking. And you'll see that across all kinds of knives because they licensed that system out. It's freely used across the market. Multiple custom makers, multiple production houses and manufacturers use it. Now, what is IKBS? IKBS is a ball bearing pivot system. And what they do is, on the inside of each handle scale, handle liner, frame, however the knife is built, around the pivot there is a machined indention, and inside that indention sits a bunch of loose ball bearings. Now, these are loose bearings. They are not bearings in a race. It is not like, say, the zero tolerance KVT system, which are bearings in a plastic race that sit around the pivot. These are loose bearings. So if you, I don't think you can see down in there with my light. No, you can't. But if you were to take this apart, you would have a huge mess if you don't catch those bearings. They're very small. They're loose sitting in there. All right. Now, this at the time was a huge innovation in modern folding knives. Nobody had this. IKBS is what made this popular. And you really, as far as I know, we have Flavio Ikoma and Rick Lala to thank for all the modern bearing systems, because they're basically the IKBS system is the one that broke this idea real big on the market. It was just instantly crazy popular. And then other, people, other manufacturers, other custom makers, they started doing their own derived sort of designs from that. Now, in this knife, let's go over materials first. Blade material, as common with Columbia River, is HCR 13 MOV. That's a mid-grade Chinese stainless steel. It has a high enough carbon content to be hardenable in the upper 50 Rockwell range. It will hold a decent edge. It is pretty easy to sharpen, especially if you have a diamond sharpener. It's not going to hold the edge forever. It's not a high-end stainless. It's not a super steel by any means, but it does have good corrosion resistance. It does have good finishability. It's easy to put multiple different finishes on. It's easy to grind. It's a pretty decent steel. You see it used a lot across Columbia River, their product line, and many other manufacturers. And the handle, which you're looking at here, is a stainless frame lock. It is a frame lock. And then G10 overlays. And these are boxed in to reveal the edge of the frame all the way around for aesthetic purposes, as you can see. But it is a frame lock. It is, heavy steel frame, and that's where you get the heavier weight of over 6 ounces, or 172 grams. Now, these G10 overlays, they're in a layered, you can see the layer in here, brown and black G10. And then you can see the alternating brown and black markings as they are textured down through the layers to different depths, to different layers, revealing the different colors of the brown and black. Now, let's go into fit and finish on this. In my example, the fit and finish is it's pretty good. Now, I bought this knife at Walmart. I caught it on sale. I paid $31.99 for this knife last year. I believe they typically, for this full-size fossil, they go around the $50 price point. And even at that price point, I think it's a pretty decent deal. But certainly at $31.99, it was a fantastic deal. And the fit and finish is equal to that price. The grinds on mine, you can see here. Let's see if we can get this camera to focus. This wouldn't be funny today. The primary grind is pretty even down through the plunge. You have a narrow edge grind because this knife is hollow ground and it is thin behind the edge, guys. It is a slicer. Now this is a fairly deep hollow grind. And guys, I'm sorry about my camera, it's just going crazy. It is a fairly deep hollow grind, so even though you don't have a super high grind line, it is thin behind the edge, especially considering that you're up close to 4mm stock thickness on this. All right, the primary grind is in a machine ground satin. The flats are in a machine ground satin with a parallel grind line opposite of the primary grind, and then your swedge is also in the same grind as the primary grind. Alright, we'll see, we're in a machine ground finish on the back of the blade here. Alright. We do have a section of jimping, and it is fine jimping, but the top of each ridge is milled flat, so it is not as effective as it could be, although it is, I would consider it to be effective jimping. It is not just aesthetic jimping, and it's a very short section here, so it's not super effective, even though I would consider it to be effective jimping. You also have jimping on the back of the flipper tab, which to me is a total non-issue, because when I flip this knife, the only thing I touch is the tip of the flipper. I don't come around with my finger onto this front face of the flipper tab, so that jimping is basically useless to me. It is more, as far as I'm concerned, it's more jimping just on the front side of the extended choil that's formed by the flipper tab in the open position. All right, so the blade fit and finish, everything is good. The only thing I will say is this blade is pretty much as ground finish. Now you can see on the inside of this hole, it is chamfered a little bit. So it is not sharp on the inside of that hole, but the top edge of the blade, after the flat grind for the flats, they've come back and cleaned up this grind, and it's left an as ground sort of edge here. It is not sharp. It won't cut you. I'm pressing down hard on it. There's no discomfort. It is just not a soft radius there. There is no chamfer. Of course, this is not tumbled, so the edges are not softened up. And again, you'll find that down here, and from the sharpening choil into the flipper tab, that same sort of real crisp machined edge. Again, not sharp, but just be aware that that is there. It is not chamfered at all. All right, now on to the handle design. All right, like I say, Flavio is known for a lot of hand-carved handles. And, I mean, he did some very, very, very intricate work and on some very expensive knives. And this is, as intricate as this looks, this is very simple for the type of thing that he did. What you have is a hammered finish on the stainless frame, the exposed portion of it, and then a cratered finish on the G10. All right, you've got this window open right here with a smooth finish on the frame on the inside of it with the holes drilled through, and as you can see, they are lined up on each side of the handle. Both handle sides are treated the same way as far as the finish goes. All right, just a plain machine silver pivot, not a big deal here, as your detail is in the handle and the frame itself, the interesting blade shape and the cutout in the blade. And then silver hardware, all Torx hardware. It is fairly busy. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of hardware visible from the show side, and pretty much the same thing unless blocked by the pocket clip on the lock side. Speaking of the pocket clip, it is a stamped steel clip. The design of the clip is really good as far as retention. The spring is good on it. It is set up on a pillared post design here. As you can see, you've got these, what almost is like a standoff used for knife handles, and then longer screws going through that, and then through the scale and into the frame. It's pretty decent. The only issue I have with the pocket clip is the tip of the pocket clip is a little high off of the scale. It's really the only part of the pocket clip that you can feel in your hand when gripping the knife. I think through extended hard use you would see that you may have a hot spot with this right here, but the rest of the clip is fine, and like I say, retention in the pocket is fine. This knife is built with a backspacer, not standoffs, and it is in Zytel, I believe. And it's sort of got a satin finish on it. Besides the jimping on the blade, you've got a section of jimping back here, and if you look at that, the jimping is proud of this backspacer because they've milled down this section of the backspacer. They've given it a recess there. This jimping here is interesting. It is really deep and really toothy, but it has a wide flat top on it. It's moderately effective. It's comfortable to use. I'm not going to say it's the best jimping because this handle is bead blasted or tumbled. Those edges are softened up a little bit, so it's not the grippiest jimping ever. And then on the inside of the handle, you've got another section at the butt end of that same type of jimping. And like I said, on the back of the flipper tab, forming the forward part of the finger choil. Now, the blade design, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not a real big fan of recurve blades. I'm not a fan at all of recurve blades. I'll tell you that personally. I understand the mechanical efficiency of a recurve blade. I understand that for your blade length, you get an extended amount of cutting edge because of the recurve design. But let's face it, guys, on a properly sharpened knife, you don't really need a recurve, and this recurve is probably only giving you about a 1/16 of an inch of additional cutting edge. The trade-off, resharpening. Now, you guys that sharpen on a flat stone, how are you going to sharpen that? Okay, you're not going to be able to sharpen that on a flat stone. Even on my KME sharpener, I can't sharpen right now because all I have is flat stones. I'm going to have to get the radius diamond sharpener so I can sharpen this knife. Good thing is, it is thin behind the edge, and it came with a pretty decent edge on it. It would shave hair new. I have used it, and while it is not super fresh sharp, it could probably use a strop. It will still cleanly cut paper. The handle design is, although you have what you may think of as a radical finish on the handle design itself is pretty basic. You've got a deep finger choil here. Basically wide open center section. It's fairly narrow, and then a wide sort of bird's beak at the butt end, and a pointy sort of striking surface at the butt end, which is reinforced by that back spacer. All right. Now, as far as the fit and finish goes on everything, handle, a blade and handle, everything is good, excellent for that $31 price point. The only trade-off is in the stainless frame with the weight being over 6 ounces. The action on this knife is what sells everybody on it. It is fantastic. It has a stout, medium hard detent. It just fires like a rocket. No issues with retention as far as staying closed. You might be able to gravity open this knife if you try it so hard that it's just useless at that point. The lockup on my example is a solid 35 or 40% and has stayed that way since it's a steel on steel lock to blade tang interface. There's no lock rock, there's no lateral or radial play in the pivot, and the centering on mine is just a hair off of perfect. So it is very good. Everything about this knife is very good. The price point that I paid for it, the $31.99 price point, the flipping action is fantastic. It's, probably the best I've felt in a lower end knife. The IKBS system is always smooth. It's a ball bearing system, so it's just as smooth pretty much as any other steel ball bearing system. I've not had any problems with dirt. I clean all my folders periodically and re-lubricate them, so I don't let a lot of dirt fill in. And then I use, for any heavy work, I'm going to use a fixed blade anyway. So overall, guys, I think, the price on this knife, $50 or lower, is an excellent deal. You've got a decent Chinese stainless steel. You've got a stainless frame lock that is sturdy. The lockup is really good. The pivot system, the IKBS pivot system, well known in the industry now. It's very smooth. The action on this thing, the detent is great. The centering's good. The lockup's good. Everything about it is pretty doggone decent. I just wish that those edges at the top of the blade and around the flipper tab had been softened a little bit. And like I say, they're not sharp like they're going to cut you, but they're not the most comfortable finished edges. It's a fairly heavy knife. For those guys that don't like any weight at all, they're not going to like this knife. It's over 6 ounces. maybe they'll want to try the smaller version, which is the same design in a 3.4 inch blade length and appropriately sized handle length. So you've got that option also. I think that this is a great way to get some of Flavio's design language in a knife, because his knives, guys, I mean, even back when I was following him, they were about $2,000 each. So I'm assuming the prices have gone up since then. I am not personally aware of any mid-tech stuff from him, but that doesn't really mean anything because I can't follow everybody. Just don't have time for that. So, you know, if there is some mid-tech stuff, that would probably be worth looking into. But at the lower end, $50 and lower price point, I think this is a great knife. It's very popular. This is one of those low-end knives that even guys that typically buy high-end knives, they're like, yeah, that's a pretty good knife. It gives you a lot of features. It gives you a lot of design aesthetics. This is one of those knives that you pull out and people are just impressed with it, and they don't care what the price point is. So guys, in closing, I'm going to recommend this one. I think it's pretty decent. If you can get down in the price on it, it is an excellent deal. It's a sturdy knife with good material, good fit and finish, and just a beautiful overall design. Alright guys, once again I say thank you for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.